love, pain, truth.
The music was playing just a little too loud, and the room was packed with people laughing, holding drinks, and talking over one another. It was supposed to be a happy night, an engagement party for their cousin. But for Mia, the evening felt like walking on a tightrope. She stood near the edge of the living room, clutching a glass of sparkling water she hadn't taken a sip of in 20 minutes. She was wearing a dress she had bought on sale, feeling slightly out of place among the designer labels and expensive perfumes that floated through the air. Across the room, Leo was holding court. He was Mia's older brother, the one who always had everything under control, or at least pretended he did. He had a good job, a nice car, and a loud laugh that demanded attention. Tonight, however, his laugh sounded sharp, like it had a jagged edge. Mia had watched him all night, noticing the way he gestured wildly with his hands and the way his eyes kept scanning the room, landing on her every few minutes with a look that made her stomach churn. Mia tried to focus on the conversation next to her. An aunt was talking about her garden, but Mia found it hard to nod and smile at the right times. She could feel Leo's gaze burning into her back. It wasn't a protective look. It was a look that warned her not to mess up. Leo had made it clear earlier that day, in a text message that was short and cold, that she needed to be on her best behavior. He didn't want her bringing the family down with her usual drama, as he liked to call it. The night wore on, and the tension in Mia's shoulders tightened. She moved toward the food table, hoping that eating something would settle her nerves. As she reached for a cracker, Leo appeared beside her. He didn't say hello. He just leaned in close, smelling of beer and cologne. "You're hovering," he whispered, his voice low but harsh. "Why are you always hovering in the corner? Go talk to people. Stop looking so miserable. You're ruining the vibe." Mia pulled back as if he had slapped her. "I'm not ruining anything, Leo. I'm just trying to stay out of the way." "You're always in the way," he muttered, grabbing a handful of chips and walking away before she could reply. Mia stood there for a moment, blinking back tears. She took a deep breath, telling herself not to let him get to her. This was her cousin's night, not theirs. She wouldn't make a scene. She put a smile back on her face, even though it felt like a mask made of heavy stone, and wandered into the kitchen to help refill the ice bucket. For a while, things seemed to calm down. Mia stayed busy, handing out napkins and picking up empty glasses. She felt useful, and being useful kept her away from Leo. But as the evening hit its second hour, the guests got louder and Leo got bolder. He had been drinking more, and his jokes were getting meaner. Mia was standing near the fireplace when she heard him laughing with a group of his friends. "That's the thing about responsibility," Leo was saying, his voice carrying across the room. "Some people just don't have it. They float through life expecting everyone else to clean up their messes." He didn't say her name, but he looked directly at her when he said it. His friends chuckled, glancing over at Mia with pity or amusement. Mia felt the heat rise in her cheeks. She looked down at her shoes, wishing she could just dissolve into the floor. Why did he have to be like this? Why did he need to tear her down to make himself feel big? She gripped her glass so hard, her knuckles turned white. She wanted to yell at him, to tell him that she was working 2 jobs and saving for school, that she was doing her best. But she knew that would only prove him right. It would be the drama he accused her of. She decided to move to the other side of the room, near the window where it was quieter. There was a small table there with a beautiful flower arrangement and an expensive-looking vase. Mia just wanted a minute of peace. She reached out to adjust a flower that was drooping, trying to fix something small in a night that felt broken. Her hand was shaking slightly from the anxiety and the adrenaline of holding in her anger. As she touched the vase, her elbow bumped the edge of the table. It wasn't a hard hit, but it was enough. The vase wobbled, tipped, and then crashed to the floor. The sound was like a gunshot in the crowded room. The music seemed to stop, although it was still playing. Conversations halted instantly. Every head turned toward the window. Shards of ceramic and water covered the floor, along with the ruined flowers. Mia froze. "Oh my God," she whispered. "I am so sorry. It was an accident." She crouched down immediately, reaching for the larger pieces, her face burning with shame. She could feel the eyes of everyone in the room on her. She just wanted to clean it up and disappear. Before she could even pick up one piece, a shadow loomed over her. It was Leo. He didn't ask if she was okay. He didn't ask if she cut herself. He stood there, looking down at her with a look of pure disgust. "Seriously, Mia?" he shouted, his voice echoing in the sudden quiet. "Can you not go one single night without being a disaster?" "Leo, please, it was an accident," she said, her voice trembling. "I don't care if it was an accident," he yelled, stepping closer and kicking a piece of the broken vase across the floor. "You are clumsy. You are careless. You ruin everything you touch. I told you to behave yourself. I told you not to embarrass us, and look at you. You're crawling on the floor like a child." Mia stood up slowly, wiping her hands on her dress. She looked around the room. People were staring. Some looked uncomfortable, shifting their weight from foot to foot. Others were whispering. No one was stepping in to help. They were all waiting to see what would happen. Leo wasn't done. The alcohol in his system had removed any filter he had left. He pointed a finger directly in her face. "Get out," he said. Mia blinked, confused. "What?" "I said get out," Leo repeated, his voice rising to a roar. "You are not welcome here if you can't act like a normal human being. Go on. Get out of my house." "This isn't even your house, Leo. It's our cousin's," Mia stammered, tears finally spilling over her cheeks. "I don't care. Get out." He took a step forward, crowding her, using his height to intimidate her. "Push her out the door before she breaks something else." The humiliation was complete. Mia felt as though she had been physically stripped of her dignity. She looked at the faces of her family members, the people who were supposed to love her, and saw judgment. She saw them agreeing with him. She felt small and dirty and incredibly alone. "Fine," she whispered, so quietly she could barely hear herself. "I'm going." She didn't look at Leo again. She couldn't. If she looked at him, she might scream, or she might hit him. And she wasn't that kind of person. She turned on her heel and walked toward the hallway. The crowd parted for her like the Red Sea, but without the miracle. It was just a path of shame. She could hear Leo behind her still talking. "Don't let her come back until she learns some respect," he told the room, trying to regain his status as the man in charge. "Some people just don't know when to quit." Mia walked down the long hallway, her vision blurred by tears. She grabbed her coat from the bed in the guest room where she had left it. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely get the buttons done up. She felt like she couldn't breathe. The walls of the house felt like they were closing in on her. She reached the front door and placed her hand on the cool metal of the handle. This was it. She was being kicked out of a family gathering by her own brother. The pain in her chest was sharp, a physical ache that made it hard to stand. She felt like a failure. Maybe he was right. Maybe she was just a mess who ruined things. She pushed the heavy door open and stepped out into the cool night air. The noise from the party was muffled now, distant, like a bad dream she was waking up from. She stood on the porch for a moment, taking a deep, ragged breath. She didn't know where she would go. She didn't have her car. She had gotten a ride with an aunt earlier, an aunt who was still inside laughing at Leo's jokes. Mia stepped off the porch and began to walk down the long driveway, away from the lights and the laughter. She just wanted to put as much distance as possible between herself and the shame burning inside her. She was heading for the street, planning to just walk until her legs gave out, when a voice stopped her cold. "And where exactly do you think you are going?" The voice wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was calm, steady, and carried a weight that made Mia stop in her tracks. It didn't sound like Leo. It didn't sound like someone who wanted to hurt her. She froze, her hand halfway to wiping a tear from her face, and turned slowly around to see who had spoken. Mia froze in the middle of the driveway, the gravel crunching softly under her shoes. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, terrified to turn around. She thought it might be Leo coming to finish the job, to scream at her some more or say something even worse. But the voice she heard didn't sound angry. It sounded tired, but strong. It was the kind of voice that didn't need to shout to be heard. She turned slowly and saw the figure sitting on the porch swing in the shadows. It was Clara, the great aunt of the future bride. Clara was in her 80s, a woman who had raised 4 children and buried a husband, and who possessed a quiet kind of power that everyone in the family respected, even if they didn't talk about it much. She was wearing a knitted shawl despite the mild weather, and she was holding a cup of tea in both hands. Leo told me to leave, Mia stammered, her voice cracking. He said I ruined everything. Clara took a slow sip of her tea before answering. Leo says a lot of things when he's been drinking, she said calmly. Most of them aren't worth the breath it takes to say them. Come here, child. Sit down for a minute. Mia hesitated. She wanted to keep walking, to put miles between herself and this house. But there was something about Clara's tone that made it impossible to run. It felt like an anchor in the middle of a storm. Mia walked back up the steps and sat on the swing next to her great-aunt. The metal chains creaked gently. I broke the vase, Mia whispered, looking down at her hands. It was an accident, but he made it feel like a crime. Clara reached over and patted Mia's knee. Vases are just glass. And clay, Mia. They break. It happens. But people are not so easy to put back together once you shatter them. Leo is trying to break you tonight. Mia looked at her, confused. Why? I didn't do anything to him. Clara sighed, looking out toward the streetlights. It isn't about you, my dear. It never is. When someone is unhappy with themselves, they look for a target. They look for the person they think is weaker, the person they think won't fight back. He sees you struggling, and instead of helping you up, he pushes you down because it makes him feel taller. Mia let out a long, shaky breath. She hadn't thought about it that way. She just thought Leo hated her. I just want to go home, she sobbed. You will, Clara promised. But not like this. Not with your tail between your legs, letting him write the story of tonight. If you leave now, he wins. He gets to tell everyone that you ran away because you were guilty. If you want to change the ending, you have to walk back in there with your head up. I can't, Mia said, shaking her head violently. I can't face him. I can't face all those people. You won't be alone, Clara said, her voice firming up. She set her teacup down on the small side table with a decisive clink. I'm going back in and you are coming with me. We are going to finish this night properly. Mia watched as Clara slowly stood up. She wasn't a tall woman, and she moved with the stiffness of old age, but as she smoothed down her dress, she seemed to grow in stature. She looked like a general preparing for battle, though her weapon would be her words, not a sword. Take my arm, Clara commanded. Mia stood up and looped her arm through her great-aunt's. She felt Clara's frail muscles but also her steely resolve. Together, they walked back toward the front door. Mia's heart was hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She felt sick to her stomach. The last thing she wanted was to open that door and see Leo's smug face again. As they stepped into the entryway, the noise from the living room hit them like a wave. The music was playing again, and people were talking. But the atmosphere was stiff. You could feel the bad energy hanging in the air. Mia tried to shrink behind Clara, but the older woman pulled her forward. They walked into the living room. For a second, nobody noticed them. Then, a guest near the kitchen stopped talking and stared. The silence spread like a ripple, until the whole room quieted down. Leo was standing by the fireplace, holding a fresh drink. When he saw Mia, his face turned dark red. I thought I told you to leave, Leo snapped, his voice cutting through the silence. He took a step toward them, his fists clenched. Why are you back here? Clara let go of Mia's arm and took a step forward, placing herself directly between Mia and her brother. She didn't shout. She didn't look angry. She just looked at Leo over the rim of her glasses. "Sit down, Leo," Clara said. It wasn't a request. It was an order. Leo blinked, confused. "Excuse me?" "Clara," she broke the vase. She made a scene. "She needs to go." "I said sit down," Clara repeated, her voice dropping an octave. She pointed to a chair across from her. Now, the authority in her voice was absolute. It was the voice of a woman who had seen it all and had no patience for nonsense. Leo looked around the room, expecting support, but he found none. The other guests were fascinated, watching the interaction like a tennis match. Feeling the eyes on him, Leo's aggression faltered. He sat down, looking like a scolded schoolboy. Clara turned to Mia. "Go get yourself a glass of water, dear. And then come sit on the sofa next to me. Don't look at him." "Look at me." Mia nodded, her legs trembling. She walked to the kitchen, grabbed a glass, and felt the room's gaze on her back. When she returned, she sat on the sofa. Clara sat in the armchair facing Leo, arranging her shawl neatly. "Now," Clara began, addressing the room as much as she was addressing Leo. "We are going to have a little lesson. It seems we have forgotten what family means." She looked straight at Leo. "You are angry, Leo. I can see that. Your face is red, your hands are shaking. You are screaming at your sister because a vase broke." A vase, an object that can be bought in a store for $50. "It's not about the vase," Leo yelled, trying to stand up again. "It is exactly about the vase," Clara cut him off sharply. "Because if it wasn't the vase, it would be something else. It would be the way she dresses, or the job she has, or the way she laughs. You are looking for a reason to eject her. You are trying to push her out of this family circle." Leo opened his mouth to argue, but Clara raised a hand to silence him. "I want you to answer a question, Leo," Clara said softly. "And I want you to think before you speak. Are you pushing her out because she is actually dangerous to this family? Is she a bad person? Is she cruel?" "Of course not," Leo mumbled, looking down at his shoes. "Then why?" Clara pressed. "Why are you so desperate to get rid of her tonight? Is it because she is the problem? Or is it because she is the only one who sees the real you?" Leo's head snapped up. "What is that supposed to mean?" Clara leaned forward. "It means that when Mia is in the room, you feel exposed. You feel like you have to be bigger, louder, and tougher to prove you are better than her. You project your own insecurity onto her. You call her a mess, but look at yourself." She gestured to his rumpled shirt and his spilling drink. "You are the one who is out of control. You are the one making a scene." The room was deadly silent. You could hear a pin drop. Mia sat frozen on the sofa, her heart pounding. She had never seen anyone talk to Leo like that. It wasn't just a scolding. It was like Clara was performing surgery on his ego, cutting right to the bone. "You think leadership means shouting the loudest and pushing people down," Clara continued, her voice gentle but piercing. "But that isn't strength, Leo. That is fear. A strong man protects his sister. He doesn't humiliate her in front of strangers. He builds her up so she doesn't feel the need to break things or apologize for existing." Leo's face crumpled. The anger was draining out of him, replaced by a look of utter shame. He looked like a little boy who had been caught with his hand in the cookie jar, but the stakes were so much higher. He glanced at Mia, and for the first time that night, he really saw her. He saw the tear stains on her cheeks. He saw the way she was gripping her knees to stop her hands from shaking. He saw the pain he had caused. I didn't mean ... double quotes, Leo started, his voice barely a whisper. He put his head in his hands. "I'm just stressed. I have so much pressure at work and you took it out on the safest target," Clara finished for him. "You took it out on the person who loves you the most because you thought she would take it. But she shouldn't have to take it, Leo. No one should." Clara reached out and took Mia's hand, squeezing it tight. "We are not kicking Mia out. If anyone needs to leave to cool off, it is you. But I think you should stay." I think you need to sit right there in your shame and look at what you've done. That is the only way you are going to learn." Leo didn't move. He didn't argue. He just sat there, staring at the floor, his ears burning red. The spell of his anger was broken. The big man act had dissolved, leaving just a lonely, regretful man. Clara turned her attention back to Mia. "Are you all right, dear?" Mia took a deep breath. The terror was gone, replaced by a strange sense of calm. She looked at her brother, who looked smaller than she had ever seen him, and she realized that Clara was right. He wasn't a monster. He was just broken in a different way than she was. "I think so," Mia said, her voice steady for the first time all night. "Good," Clara said, picking up her teacup again as if nothing had happened. "Then let's enjoy the rest of the party. And someone please sweep up that glass before someone gets hurt. We don't want any more accidents tonight." The tension in the room didn't vanish instantly. It lingered like smoke after a fire, but the dynamic had shifted completely. Mia wasn't the victim anymore. She was the survivor, and she had a powerful ally in her corner. As the music started back up, a little quieter this time, Mia realized that the night wasn't over. The real lesson was just beginning. The silence that filled the room after Clara spoke wasn't the same heavy, suffocating silence from before. It was different. It was the kind of quiet that happens when people are truly thinking, when they are processing something real that has just sliced through the fake noise of a party. The music was still playing softly in the background, but nobody was dancing. Nobody was laughing loudly just to fill the air. They were all watching Leo. Leo sat slumped in his chair, looking like a balloon that had all the air let out of it. His elbows were on his knees, and he was rubbing his face with his hands. For a long time he didn't move. He just sat there, staring at the floor, letting Clara's words sink in. Mia watched him from the sofa, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She didn't feel angry anymore. The adrenaline had faded, leaving her feeling exhausted and strangely calm. She realized she wasn't afraid of him anymore. She had seen behind the curtain, and the wizard there was just a scared, unhappy man. After a few minutes, a cousin, a young man named Ben, who had been watching the whole thing from the kitchen doorway, quietly walked over to the spot where the vase had shattered. He didn't say anything. He just grabbed a broom and a dustpan and started to sweep up the broken glass. It was a small act, but it broke the spell. The tension in the room cracked. Just a little bit, Mia stood up. She walked over to Ben and took the dustpan from his hands. "I'll do it," she said softly. "I made the mess. I should clean it." Ben looked at her, then at Clara, who nodded slightly. He handed her the pan and stepped back. Mia crouched down and began to pick up the larger pieces of ceramic. She moved slowly and carefully. She wasn't rushing this time. She wasn't panicking. She was just cleaning up a mess because that's what you do in life. You make mistakes. You break things and you clean them up. It didn't mean she was a bad person. It just meant she was human. As she worked, she felt a shadow fall over her. She looked up to see Leo standing there. He didn't look like a giant anymore. He looked smaller, his shoulders hunched forward. He held a small trash bag open for her. Mia paused for a second, looking at the bag, then up at his face. His eyes were red, and he couldn't look her in the eye. He was shaking a little bit. "Here," Leo mumbled. "Put it in here." Mia swept the glass into the bag. Then she stood up and faced him. They were just inches apart. For years she had looked up to him, wanting his approval, fearing his anger. But standing there in the quiet living room, she realized she didn't need his approval to be okay. "I'm sorry, Mia," Leo whispered. The words were so quiet she almost didn't hear them. I was really stressed about work. They're talking about layoffs and I feel like I'm drowning. I took it out on you. It wasn't fair. You didn't deserve that." It wasn't a perfect apology. He still made it partly about himself and his problems, but it was honest. It was the first time he had admitted to being weak instead of trying to cover it up with strength. "I know you're stressed, Leo," Mia said, her voice steady. But you can't treat people like that. You can't kick me when you're down, it hurts. I know, he said, finally looking at her. I know. I feel like a jerk. Clara was right. I was trying to push you away so I wouldn't have to look at myself. Mia sighed. She could see the regret written all over his face. She realized that holding on to her anger would only hurt her, not him. I accept your apology, she said. But don't do it again. Next time, just tell me you're having a bad day. You don't have to be perfect around me. Leo nodded, his throat tight. I won't. I promise. He reached out, hesitated for a moment, and then gave her an awkward one-armed hug. It wasn't a movie moment hug, but it was real. It was two broken people trying to put the pieces back together. As the night went on, the party didn't return to the loud, fake celebration it was at the start. It transformed into something else entirely. The guests didn't go back to bragging about their jobs or their new cars. The atmosphere had shifted. People started sitting in smaller groups, talking in lower voices. They started talking about real things, about their fears, their struggles, and the times they felt like they weren't good enough. It was as if Clara's honesty had given everyone else permission to be honest too. The masks came off. Mia found herself sitting on the floor with a few of her cousins, talking not about the broken vase, but about how hard it was to navigate adult life. She realized she wasn't the only one who felt like she was messing up. Everyone was just winging it, hoping nobody noticed their cracks. Around midnight, the guests started to leave. There were no loud goodbyes, just quiet nods and meaningful hugs. When the last person had gone, the house was peaceful. The mess was cleaned up, the food was put away, and the music was off. Mia found her coat near the door. She was tired, her eyes heavy from crying earlier, but she felt lighter. She felt like she had dropped a heavy backpack she had been carrying. For years, Clara was sitting in the same armchair, looking sleepy but satisfied. Mia walked over to her and knelt by the chair. Thank you, Mia whispered. I was going to run away. I know, Clara said, patting Mia's cheek with a soft, wrinkled hand. But running away doesn't fix anything, does it? You have to stand your ground eventually. I learned a lot tonight, Mia said. About him and about me. What did you learn? Clara asked, her eyes twinkling in the lamplight. I learned that his anger isn't about me, Mia said slowly. And I learned that I'm stronger than I thought. I didn't fight back with him. I didn't scream. I just stayed. That felt like the strongest thing I could do. Clara smiled. Exactly. Strength isn't about shouting, Mia. It's about knowing who you are and not letting anyone else define you. You didn't let him push you out. You stayed and you faced him. That is how you earn respect. Not by demanding it, but by behaving in a way that deserves it. Mia hugged the old woman tight. I love you, Clara. I love you too, dear. Now go home and get some sleep. Tomorrow is a new day. Mia walked out into the cool night air. The street was quiet, with just the sound of crickets chirping in the bushes. She took a deep breath, filling her lungs with the fresh air. She looked back at the house one last time. The lights were still on downstairs where Leo was likely cleaning up the rest of the party mess. She knew things weren't magically perfect. Between them, Leo would still have bad days. He would still get stressed. But she knew now that she didn't have to be his punching bag. She had found her voice, and she had Clara's wisdom in her back pocket. She began to walk toward her aunt's house to crash on the sofa for the night. With every step, she felt a little bit more of the shame from the evening fall away. She wasn't the girl who broke the vase. She wasn't the girl who got kicked out. She was a woman who had survived a difficult night and walked away with a lesson that would stay with her for the rest of her life. That no one can make you feel small unless you agree to get on your knees. And tonight, she had stood up. The moon was bright above her, lighting the path ahead. It was a simple ending to a complicated night, but sometimes simple is exactly what you need. Mia smiled to herself, pulled her coat tighter, and kept walking.